In this video, the Phala Phala scandal finally gets explained. And it's not everything that you'll hear in most media. But if you stay with me all the way till my biblical reaction at the end, you'll get the 3 C's. That's all you need to know. And the rest is just noise. And I'm going to close by dropping a bombshell because the point is South Africa will prosper. You ready? Okay, press like and let's go. So of course you know that 3 years ago, this is when the scandal broke.
Former State Secretary-General Arthur Fraser has met with the Hawks. In a statement, Fraser says the meeting happened so that he could assist the Hawks with their investigation into his complaint against President Cyril Ramaphosa. Fraser says he gave them additional information and details to enable them to do their work. The former spy boss also says he appreciates their professionalism and the speed at which they have responded to his complaint. Earlier this month, Fraser laid a criminal complaint against Ramaphosa over the president's alleged failure to report the theft of money alleged to be in the millions from his game farm in Limpopo. Ramaphosa has denied any wrongdoing.
Okay, he has denied any wrongdoing from the beginning. So, just recently, the NEC got together and they made a decision that they are backing up Ramaphosa. Let's hear how Fikile Mbalula defines this scandal.
These dollars you are talking about were found in a farm of the president. Whether they were in couches or wherever they were found, there was a break-in the farm of the president, and to that extent, there is a case in court in terms of the break-in. That's what has happened. So the onus is on the owner of the dollars to explain. And if he's on the wrong side of the law, that will be it. The only source of engagement in relation to this issue is the institutions we have created to probe all of these particular questions. Is this compatible with ANC values? ANC values do not say people must steal. Has the president stolen? He didn't steal, they stole from him.
So that's the scandal. The owner of the dollars, whoever brought them in, must account. And those who stole the dollars, they stole. So before we actually get into what is this scandal, which is the 3 C's, let's start with the man. Is the man involved in this scandal a naive villager? Nope. Is he an informal trader? Nope. A confused pensioner? Maybe? Nope. Who is the man? Because if you forget the man, you forget the scandal. The scandal is that Cyril Ramaphosa, a qualified lawyer, a former legal advisor, the chairperson behind drafting the Constitution, the chief negotiator in CODESA, a former Secretary-General, a CEO of the ANC and the mighty ANC back then, the leader of NUM, a union which I believe he took from 3,000 members and grew it up to 60,000 members, a leader in COSATU, a man who has held chairmanships in boardrooms, directorships, and shareholding. A billionaire. In fact, most people said it's good that we have a billionaire coming in now because he has no reason to steal from the state. A president who came into power on a clean-up ticket after state capture and 9 wasted years. This is not important because I'm trying to put him down. It's good for perspective. Because the question becomes, does this man understand and probably even is an expert in the seriousness of cash, records, what's legal, what's illegal, banking, disclosure, risk and public office, process, paper trails, reporting duties, risk, compliance, formal handling of serious matters, corporate governance, audit trails, conflicts of interests, record keeping, financial controls? Can one man be an expert or understand all of these things? Well, probably not. But what if he's had enough practice? Do you think he might have figured any of this out, having shares in McDonald's and being the master franchiser? You know, if he was weak in one of them, he would have picked it up as chairperson at Bidvest, or maybe as a director at Mondi, or maybe at MTN, at Lonmin, at Max Steel, at Standard Bank. Do you think at some point all of these things came up while he was leading at SAB Miller? And if he missed any of them from the corporate world, what about as a deputy president, leader of government business? I think it's fair to think on any of these things above my head. I'd say not only does he understand them, but he must be an expert at them, or at least very good at all of them. The scandal is this man is linked to the 3 C's. The first C is the cash, 10 million rands. Not pocket money, not petty cash, not envelope, not money that fills up a laptop bag. 10 million rands in cash. So the amount is shocking to be in cash. But what triggers further red flags is that it's in dollars. So there's legal and regulatory matters that are linked to the man we started with. So the first C is the cash. The second C is the couch. I know you know all of this, but you're going to hear so much over the coming period that it helps to just remember the scandal is the man being linked to the first C, cash, and second C, the couch, is not in the bank, not in the safe, not in a lawyer's trust account. It's inside furniture. In fact, a few days ago, the Portfolio Committee on Police were frustrated because nobody knows what kind of magical couch is this.
Where's the couch? And where's the leftover money counted and confiscated as part of evidence? And if not, why not? Because we can't be told here, Chair, to say that, no, the couch doesn't mean anything. That housebreaker was not about stealing the couch. It was about stealing the money. And the money, unfortunately, those people who were working there knew where the money was. The money was on the sofa, or whether the sofa was moved. If it's true, because there's that allegation that the sofa was moved elsewhere.
Everyone knows that money was found in a couch. Waar is die couch? Was this couch actually booked in as part of evidence? Because there's no pictures nowhere. We don't hear anything about this couch. I'm asking again, almost $500,000 of money. That is a lot of money, and we were told it was stashed in a couch. Ek wil sien hoe lyk die couch. Does this couch have a hidden safe in it? Where is the couch that was meant to have been booked in?
Where is the sofa, the couch? The crime we investigated that has responded to earlier, it's a house breaking and theft. Yes, indeed, the sofa, if there's a sofa in a house, it is part of the furniture, but the crime is house breaking and theft, and it's not the theft of the sofa, it's the theft of cash.
Put a pin on this engagement, we'll come back to it. Now, the cash was in the couch, not overnight, not one weekend, not until the bank opens. For close to 6 weeks and 5 days, approximately, this money, so much money, in a weird currency, is sitting in the couch. Now, that's pretty much the scandal. Now, the theft of the cash in the couch is not the scandal. The theft exposes the scandal. Let's hear Mbeki describe it in his own way.
The story was that there's a Sudanese businessman who lives in in Dubai, who came to South Africa carrying loads and lots of cash in dollars, bought buffaloes. And I'm sure all of us have heard this, that the Commissioner of Taxes, Mr. Kisbetter, have said there is no record of such monies being declared at OR Tambo Airport. So that record doesn't exist. It's not been found. But there's no assumption to think that it exists, but has not been found. So it hasn't been found. And therefore the suspicion arises naturally. Is this not part of money laundering? It arises naturally. Because I don't know how much money I've owned at any particular time, but certainly never owned $580,000. And it's strange, it's odd, that the successful business person who's got that amount of money and can buy buffaloes walks around with that kind of money as cash. It's a strange concept. All of this emphasize, it draws attention to this issue, to the question. Are we not yet dealing with a problem of money laundering? So I'm saying that the colleague, when he said that it's money laundering basically, a grey listing business, and is this Phala Phala thing not related to that? I'm saying that's a legitimate issue to arise. But of course, yet to be proved whether in fact it is money laundering.
So of course, the man should tell us about the cash in the couch. So immediately, Parliament tried to get some answers out of him 3 years ago, and this is basically what happened.
Speaker, take your seat. No, it's a point of exigence. Take your seat. There is no exigence. Take your seat. Take your seat, Tambo.
President Cyril Ramaphosa's virtual appearance sparked an uproar from EFF members. They raised concerns around his conspicuous absence from the National Assembly.
The way we are constituted, it is extremely wrong. There are no longer COVID restrictions. Postpone the sitting, arrange a proper venue, and allow all of us to come under one roof. Because the way you are doing is tantamount to protecting the president of the ANC and the executive from being held properly accountable to Parliament.
By far, the biggest hot button item was the 2020 theft at Ramaphosa's Phala Phala farm in Limpopo.
We want an explanation of the man in the mattress and pillows of Cyril Ramaphosa today. We want the man which is in the pillows.
The first part of the question is asking if the president is willing to engage the elected representatives of South Africa on this particular issue.
I stand ready to, as people have said, take the nation into its confidence. I stand ready to do so, to give an explanation. But for me, it's been important that this matter having occurred, that I should give space, stand back, and allow the various agencies to deal with this matter as thoroughly as I believe they are doing.
However, MPs wouldn't be appeased and didn't hold back.
The question has not been answered. There has not been an attempt on the part of the president to respond to the question or to try to attempt to even give an answer.
The president must answer the question today. He went to kidnap people, he engaged in money laundering, he intimidated women and kidnapped women in his farm, and we are told he must not answer. Please, the president must answer the question.
The President says he will account to investigative authorities rather than Parliament. That is a very dismal state of affairs. So I would implore the President, he says, I stand ready to answer all the questions. That is now, that he would use his discretion and answer to Parliament right now.
Meanwhile, political parties have until Thursday to submit their name of experts who will sit on a panel to look into the contentious issue.
Which takes us to the third C, which brings some kind of perspective to the scandal, the cover-up. So on the 13th of December 2022, retired Chief Justice Ngobo basically says Ramaphosa may have violated Section 96(2) and Section 34(1) of PRECA. Section 96(2) of the Constitution says the President shall not have a side gig. Section 34(1) of PRECA says if you are in a position of authority and something like a theft or bribery, but theft happens that's above 100,000, thou shalt report it to the Hawks, not a police station, not a detective, not a public protector, the Hawks. And 214 ANC MPs answer his question of, will you investigate this? And they all go, no, thank you. 3 months later, SARS, the South African Revenue Services, comes out with a statement. They tell us Ramaphosa and his company, Tabanyoni CC, are tax compliant. And then adds to the statement basically to say, the President gave us permission to tell you he is tax compliant, and we encourage all other politicians, all other people in power to give us permission to tell the country that they are tax compliant. Remember, he said, I'll talk to you after the institutions. Institution number 1 answers a real question. Is he tax compliant? And they come out and tell us he's tax compliant. Well, 3 days later, Kieswetter, the commissioner of SARS, comes out again and says the $4 million sale of the game at Ramaphosa's farm has been declared.
A tax compliance statement issued by SARS indicates that the $4 million sale of game animal at President Cyril Ramaphosa's Phala Phala farm in 2020 has been declared. Now, the South African Revenue Services Commissioner Edward Kieswetter says all high-profile political office bearers should agree to make their tax affairs public as evidence of a commitment to transparency. And he joins us live now. Thank you so much, Commissioner, for your time. Of course, these are two issues. I mean, we saw the first statement that talks about the buyer, and now the statement of talking about the president. Let's talk about the clarity around these two statements because they are part of the same story.
So the accountability for the declaration of bringing the cash into our country rests with a traveller. Any amount above 25,000 has to be declared. If it is higher than that, SARS customs officers will detain the balance, and the traveller would have to apply to the Reserve Bank for the release of the money, subject to a justifiable explanation. SARS can find no evidence that such a declaration has been made in terms of assessing the tax liability of the taxpayer, and in this case, the President, together with the entities in question, and based on the audit and the investigation we've done, we can say that all outstanding returns and questions are submitted, all outstanding payments are paid, there is therefore no outstanding liability, and that means the taxpayer is fully compliant. That's the statement we made, and we could not make that statement without the consent of the President and the public officers who are responsible for those entities.
SARS doesn't help us. They narrow their concern to did he file tax returns. But we are none the wiser about why the man has the cash in the couch, except that the cash was not even declared on entry because there's no proof of it. So, institution number 2, 30th of June 2023, the Public Protector releases a report. She basically says the president has pretty much done nothing wrong. You know, like specifically, clearly, on the nose kind of wrong. And he doesn't really like proper really have a side gig. I mean, well, you know what I mean. But then she goes on to say, but his chief bodyguard, Wally Rode, now he's been naughty. And so that's all we knew by the 30th of June 2023 from Advocate Galega. And I don't know if I'm exaggerating when I say she says he doesn't kind of really have a side gig. Here for yourself. You tell me at the bottom.
And Section 96 of the Constitution is very clear on, in fact, I'm going to borrow from it, saying that members of the cabinet and deputy ministers may not undertake paid work or act in a way that is inconsistent with their office or expose themselves to any situation involving the risk of a conflict between their official responsibilities and private interests. And I wonder if you took this section into account, because I know that you used, of course, the Constitution, used the Executive Members Ethics Act. You also used, of course, the Public Protector Act. But did you take this act into consideration?
Most definitely, it is there in the report. We have taken it into account, and we go in length to interpret what is paid work, and we go again into the Code of Ethics, which speaks of remunerative work, basically interpreting what is in the Constitution. And we analyze that, and we come to the conclusion that the president did not undertake paid work, but rather has financial interest in the close cooperation.
However, I would like to say that I'm a farmer. I'm in the cattle business and the game business. And through that business, which has been declared in Parliament and all over, I buy and I sell animals. Sometimes people buy these animals, and some of the people who have bought some of the animals, some of them are here. I do it, yes. I do it through, the sales are sometimes through cash or sometimes through transfers. Some of the people who are offshore customers and who are sometimes local, they come through and buy animals, and some of them come also to hunt on the farm. And so this that's being reported was a clear business transaction of selling animals.
Well, we interact with that in our report, and we take that in line with the evidence that was before us. The president has members' interest, which translates into financial interest, into the farm. However, he does not run the operations of the farm. There are managers who manage the farm. There are farm workers who work on the farm. It is the manager, even on the day in question, who handled the transaction of sale. It was not the president. He was not present at the farm. They also gave information that he actually goes to the farm. Really, he's not always at the farm.
But he was
now,
told,
when you look at,
when I read, pardon me for coming in there.
The information,
he was told about the sale, and a lot of what Mr. Ndlovu says.
Allow me to finish, and then you'll get there.
But I just wanted to just get there before we run out of time.
No, I'm going to attend to that. He was told of the sale, but does that amount to a day-to-day operations of the farm? The definition says he must be involved into the day-to-day operations. And more time must be put into that for us to be able to prove.
How sure are you that he's not involved in the day-to-day runnings of the farm? How sure? How certain?
We had to deal with interviewing witnesses and take the evidence before us. So it is not a matter of being sure, but it is a matter of relying on evidence that is before us.
So Your report says that you considered the meaning of concepts of paid work or remunerated work as gleaned from various sources, and the overarching conditions which arise from most definitions refers to an employment relationship or a self-employed person who provides work or renders physical or mental labor for remuneration or payment in money or in kind. He says in that clip, I'm a farmer, I sell. When you sell to get money. You don't sell to not get money. So is that not a job? Is a farmer not a job?
No, it is not.
What is it?
It is two-phrased. You can either have financial interest or you can perform it in terms of a job.
He says I sell.
But the information that we have before us in terms of selling is that he doesn't physically sell. And at the end of the clip, if you listen carefully, he says they go to the farm to purchase. So in this instance, if you look into this instance, which we were investigating, at the time when the sale took place, he was not at the farm. It is the manager who conducted the transaction and who further confirms that if Ndlovu is not there, Van Veilig is there to be able to interact with the buyers. So we do not have information that the president interacts with the buyers. So yes, he says he sells, but does he physically sell? Does he put his mind and physique into the runnings of that farm on a day-to-day basis so that we can prove paid
Mr. Ndlovu, according to also even your report, gave him quite a detailed report at length about the money, how it was to be, handled. And he says, I'm going to go on holiday, we'll handle the money when I come back and all of that. Now, the handling of the money, why does it have to wait for him to come back from holiday if he's not involved in the day-to-day? Because if you're not involved in the day-to-day, you don't want to know how the money is banked. You just say, is it banked? Yes. Why must Mr. Ndlovu go to such lengths of telling him this is where I'm going to move it from, to move it there, to move it there and there? Is that not an operational matter?
Remember, the farm manager, who is Van Veilig, was not available at that time. He was on leave. And Mr. Ndlovu is fairly junior in terms of the operations there. But in terms of our assessment of the matter, you cannot say that a person who's got a financial interest in a business and there is a large sum of foreign currency, not being informed that there is this money that we have received, and they say, wait for me to come back from holiday. Now, how is that a day-to-day?
Also decided to go very narrowly and just answer a narrow question in the executive's code, and we were still none the wiser about why would this man have this cash in a couch. But then on the 21st of August 2023, the South African Reserve Bank also released a statement, and it basically said, we only asked one question: was Regulation 6.1 triggered? And we conclude that the cash is real enough to receive, to keep, to hide, to steal, but it's not real enough, according to our legalese, to trigger exchange control breach. So we call it a transaction that was not perfected. So Regulation 6.1 was not triggered. And by the way, we're not a cop. Don't ask us anything else. Hear him for yourself being grilled by parliamentarians.
You mentioned that Mr. Hazim left the money as a security deposit. Where is the contract? Why was cash taken and not a bank guarantee?
Member of Parliament Ngabayomzi Kwangwa adds that it's especially suspicious considering that the deal was not concluded.
The investigation that we are dealing with, everybody had been saying this thing. The money didn't go through the banking system. So that doesn't even arise. Once again, our responsibility in this investigation had to do with the possible violation of exchange control regulation.
How can it be that 2 or 3 years later you have bought so many buffaloes but you have not collected? In fact, there is no buffalo saying here. This is just money laundering. Why is the Reserve Bank not investigating this matter as a money laundering matter is my question.
It is for the FIC and the law enforcement authorities. It is not for the SARB. The SARB's responsibility ends with the institutions that we oversee.
So after the Reserve Bank, we were still none the wiser on the man, the cash, the couch. But then in October 2023, IPID completed their report and they stamped it top secret. They did an investigation, but they said, you can't read what we found.
The IPID report on Phala Phala was classified by the head of IPID. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Not by yourself. So based on your response on what the mandate of IPID is, can I then confirm that IPID would not be investigating the president? They are investigating police conduct.
That's correct.
Now, how does one get a report declassified, Minister, if somebody was looking for a report that IPID would have classified?
You will need to wait until IPID declassifies it. In other words, they review their decision and they come to that conclusion. When there was a question from Parliament on the classification, which was mistakenly assumed to be me who had done that, I actually took the question, went to IPID to say, did you classify? What were the reasons? I'm facing a question in Parliament, and they told me that it is them, independent of the minister, and some of the reasons they touted were other parallel investigations that were going on in relation to Phala Phala, and therefore they then classified for that reason until they come to another conclusion, maybe at the conclusion of some criminal cases that were going on under another entity that time.
Thank you, Minister. So I would be correct then, based on what you said, if I was to advise Honorable Skhosana that if he is looking for information about an IPID report that does not investigate the president, despite his repeated assurances to that regard, he has to approach IPID for the classification of the report.
That's correct, Honorable.
Thank you. So I trust that will bring the matter to a close, Honorable Skhosana, on Phala Phala.
Now, before I tell you what happened next, with the next institution, which is the NPA, they had come out 13th of June the year before saying,
my understanding is that the docket is not with the NPA yet, but I stand to be corrected. But again, it's the same response. The police must be allowed to do their investigations. And at the end of the day, the rule of law means if the evidence is there to prosecute, the NPA must take a decision to prosecute.
Well, 2 years later, the DPP of Limpopo came out and said, we are not prosecuting anyone. SARB couldn't help us. SARS couldn't help us understand anything. The public protector couldn't help us understand anything. Now the NPA
announced that they've taken a decision not to prosecute the president or anyone else in relation to the Phala Phala farm case. In that statement, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Ivy Tenga, that's in Limpopo, says the decision not to prosecute was taken after a careful assessment of all available evidence presented to the prosecutors by the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation. The complaint, laid by Arthur Fraser, requested police to investigate the conduct of the President and Major General Wally Rhoda, alleging that it amounted to the commission of money laundering and corruption.
But now on the 25th of April 2025, Action SA started putting pressure. They said, remember that IPID report that's been classified? Declassify that thing. We will embarrass you. We will harass you until you declassify.
What do you want from IPID? What do you want? Why do you want the report of their investigation?
We want transparency, we want accountability, Stephen, and I think these are two things that have been kept from the South African people throughout this entire Phala Phala scandal. IPID has gone and classified this investigation as top secret, and they have cited two provisions of the Minimum Information Security Standards policy for that basis. The first is that it may cause disruption with another institution of government. Now, that's an astonishing claim. In other words, one government institution may offend another, and the South African people don't have the right to know what's in that document. Or it might disrupt an ongoing investigation, which is a tenuous claim 6 years on, when there's been no action of any variety. Ultimately, what we're concerned, there's been a cover-up. Those Presidential Protection Unit members are charged with the protection of the president, and they investigated that crime with our concern being that they were protecting the president about the $580,000 he had stuffed in his couch, rather than independently investigating a crime of robbery like the detective services of our country would ordinarily do. We want to know what is in that report, either because we believe there was political instructions given to them to go ahead and operate outside of the law, or there needs to be accountability for these law enforcement officers operating as a law unto themselves. But we've seen it too many times in our country where law enforcement officers get protected for doing the wrong things because they're covering up for their political masters.
So on the 10th of April 2026, IPID's hidden declassified report finally gets published. How it happens is Action SA says, we want that report, puts in a PIA, takes them to court, keeps harassing, following, pushing, and then finally they go, if you don't release that report, you don't know what we're gonna do to you. And IPID goes, actually it's been released for over a month. Action SA says, then give it to us. And they go, it's released, but finally they got the report. The report basically said, remember how the public protector pinned it all on Wally Rhoda, the president's head of security? Well, actually, the president's head of security, who was investigating without opening a case, was actually traveling with the president's advisor and representative to Namibia and Uppington, and Wally Rhoda was doing his investigation in the name of the president. So the IPID report said discipline Wally Rhoda, discipline Rekotso, because what they did was really out of line. They used the president's name. They traveled with the president's man, who was not allowed to be in police vehicles and police budget. And this is the report that was buried and had to be pulled out of the hands of IPID by force. I guess the cover-up kind of gives us perspective on the scandal, which is the man, the cash, the couch. And then, of course, now recently, the Constitutional Court said, hey, your initial vote in December 2022 is null and void. Let the impeachment process go forward. And so a few days ago, IPID and SAPS appeared before the police committee in Parliament, and guess what? They asked many simple questions. They just got fog.
As the meeting dragged on, MPs across party lines grew increasingly frustrated, accusing officials of dodging questions and failing to provide meaningful answers on critical aspects of the investigation, including allegations of bribery and activities in Namibia. That frustration ultimately led to calls for a full in-person parliamentary session with both IPID and SAPS.
So, Chair, I had other questions regarding the bribery, the motive, what happened in Namibia. However, because we're not getting answers, my proposal, let us have a session in physically.
If we are agreeing that we are going to meet physical, if we are saying the responses that we are getting are not proper and we should be meeting physical, I need clarity from you, Chair.
With tensions mounting in the virtual meeting, Acting Police Minister Feroz Khashalia agreed that a physical engagement with the committee was necessary.
The committee needs to have a longer meeting, a physical meeting. We we will comply with your request.
Colleagues, with that, I'm going to close the meeting and we will send the necessary notice and arrangements as soon as we can.
Particularly the role played by the Presidential Protection Unit head, Major General Wale wrote, but MPs were left with more questions than answers, setting the stage for another high-stakes confrontation when IPID and SAPS returned to Parliament in person.
No one around the president was fired. His staff members weren't fired. Wale Rode wasn't fired. Bejani Chauke wasn't fired. Someone says, oh yeah, but of course President Ramaphosa would keep Wale Rode. He never fires anybody. Well, remember that when the DA minister went to America, within 2 months, he was fired. So we do know that President Ramaphosa is able to take decisions. So if Wale Rode was just a loose cannon, doing things on his own, well, he's still the head of his security even after the IPID report came out. But the IPID report was squashed, and then the police then said, oh, we've disciplined Wale Rode and we found him to be completely innocent, and saying that to a public who had not seen what was in the top secret IPID report. But now that we've seen the IPID report, the question becomes, why would President Ramaphosa not fire these two people who on their own used his name, the report says, did some really scary stuff, crossed borders, traveled without authorization, apparently gave wrong information about where they were going, apparently did all of this off the books and never reported it, but ran it on their own without a case. Now this is Phala Phala explained. It is not about a burglary. The burglary merely exposes Phala Phala. Phala Phala is this particular man with this much cash in the couch. And what helps us to kind of get a perspective is how the cover-up, how all the institutions have acted till now. Do we know why this man had this cash in the couch? No, we still don't. The delay tactics are still going on. As we know, the president in this video is taking the Section 89 independent panel report on review. So whatever it is to make sure that we never get to know why this man had this cash in that couch and why all the institutions seem to have all conspired for a cover-up. My biblical reaction. Then the children of Israel could not stand before their enemies, but turned their backs before their enemies. In other words, ran away from their enemies, because they have become doomed to destruction. Neither will I be with you anymore unless you destroy the accursed from among you. Get up, sanctify the people, and say, sanctify yourselves for tomorrow. There is an accursed thing in your midst, O Israel. You cannot stand before your enemies until you take away the accursed thing from among you. Sometimes nations struggle because there is an accursed thing among them. I don't think the accursed thing is necessarily President Ramaphosa. I don't even think the accursed thing is necessarily the cash in the couch. I don't think the accursed thing is per se the institutions and how they seem to have been involved in a cover-up for close to 6 years. The accursed thing is deeper than that. And we are working, we are strategizing, so much happening behind the scenes, because some things just need the removal of the accursed thing. Because for as long as the accursed thing is in a nation, it just can't win. No jobs created. Cities collapsing, going bankrupt. The corruption, the worst almost in the world. The crime and murder, worst almost in the world. How do we get to a place of prosperity where we start to see that the unemployment percentage keeps ticking down all the time, that things are getting better and better, that more people are moving closer and closer and closer to the soft life? We have to remove the accursed thing and sanctify the people. And that is what we are committed to. And that's why I want to thank all of you who are on the Prosperity Pledge. And so if you want to support this channel and help us remove the accursed thing, because that's our commitment, please go to the bottom. If you're not a Prosperity Pledger, it's in the first pinned comment. Go and click it. It'll take you across. And we'll appreciate you holding up our hands as we go on to remove the accursed thing. Not just with these videos to keep you updated, but so much more happening behind the scenes. So, no man can serve two masters. Either you love the one, hate the other, or you despise the one and honor the other. You cannot serve God and Karl Marx. So, let's make history together, and we will remove the accursed thing, and South Africa will prosper. We will win. We will, in the end, see a turnaround in a positive direction. I hope you enjoyed seeing the Phala Phala scandal finally explained. It's the man, the cash, the couch, and the light on it is the cover-up. Let's make history together. Cheers.